Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to take an opportunity to do something I've never done on my channel in the last 12 years, and that is to talk about a rebrand project. This was a collaboration project with a couple of friends who started their own agency a year ago, and they called it 5280 Creative. So a little bit of background. I went to college with Alyssa, and we were both in the graphic design program, and then she decided to go into photography. And so she is a documentary photographer in St. Joe, Missouri. And Miles, who I met through Alyssa, of course, it's her husband, he has worked in radio for many years, and he developed their marketing department, and then he moved companies and got some more experience there and decided it was really time for him to go out on his own. And he had a lot of connections to do that and has been very successful in his first year. So he reached out to me a few months ago and was like, hey, I've got a project that I think you'd be a great fit for. And in the past, I've left it open to say, hey, if you've got anything, always let me know. And I can tell you if I'm interested in it or have the time to do it. So he reaches out to me a few months ago and said, hey, I've got a project that I think you'd be a great fit for. And I was like, well, I'm really busy right now, but is it something I shouldn't turn down? And it was like, yeah, it's for this family-owned floral boutique, and they've been around since the 90s, and they're looking to do a rebrand because they're going to be moving to a new location downtown. This is the perfect time for them to do a rebrand and elevate their brand. So I was like, okay, sold. And then he asked, of course, how much will you charge me to do it? And I'm notorious for undervaluing myself. So I gave him a number and he said, well, I'll pay you more than that, and negotiated up. And I was like, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And so this was our first collaboration and it went really well. I was very thankful that he did the legwork on the account management side and getting all the information from the client, their inventory, and then he did a great job presenting the information to me and then presenting our work back to the client for feedback and narrowing that down. So it worked really well, and it was a breath of fresh air for me to not have to do the estimate and that sort of thing. So here was the logo that we finalized. And I want to take you through some of the process, setting the stage for the audience and the look and feel we wanted to go with based on the client feedback and what we recommended. So Miles did a great job putting together some slides for presentation. They wanted an elevated upscale brand, which includes both flowers and a boutique. And so Garden Gate is essentially artisanal, unique, personable, and sophisticated. They kind of had a farmhouse persona and they wanted to get away from that. They really have a wide scale audience because they have flowers from everything in life from birth to death, and it's a very diverse range of people. Some of their competitors were these logos, which are very dated and pictorial, kind of clip art, like hard to read. And so we narrowed down the audience to 35 to 45 females, and these are not the type of people who go to Hy-Vee and grab a bouquet or some type of fresh flower department store. These are really custom bouquets, and they take a lot of time and pride in their creativity and the arrangements that they make and craft. So some of their inspiration for the logo design were these brands. And since they were moving to a new location in downtown St. Joe, it was the perfect timing to do the rebrand, and they were looking for color recommendations for the interior design. Primarily, we suggested doing a lot of white everywhere, and then possibly kind of a robin's egg blue or some kind of blue. So I also helped them with the color palette and coming up with some concepts. So here is my original artboard, and I'll just go through some of the concepts that I came up with and then how we narrowed that down after they gave me feedback. Actually, before I do that, let's take a look at the before and after. So before, it's honestly not the worst logo I've ever seen, but they had a script font and were sometimes using this circle, or they did use some lines before. And so at some level, the new one is still recognizable, but we definitely elevated the brand with the font choices and the space, the hierarchy with the logo. All right, so I did a lot of variations, which is very common for me. So I kept that circular badge style and explored an actual gate icon. I really love this style with the flourish, and then integrating that into a couple different styles of the G, uppercase and lowercase. Tried a few different fonts. Here was some exploration with, again, some of the gate pieces. They said they liked the color palette of LaCroix. And here were some other icons and integrating that flourish. So I think that gives you a good idea of variations that I proposed. And then in round 2, here's when we started narrowing based on what they wanted to present to the client. And I started defining more of the fonts. One of the example fonts that I originally went with was going to be very expensive on licensing, which is common. So this font was going to be like $3,000. So that meant I needed to look for a font that I could adjust and customize for our own. So we gave them some options with no details here from the flowers. We had thin lines, and we also had dots, which I really liked too. This looked really cool and white on like a craft paper. And so this project is also great to talk about because it is a text-only logo design. And some people might think that, that's so easy to use a text logo design, but actually it was really hard to come up and refine the font. So here were a few of the badges that we narrowed down to. I really liked this style of G, which I had customized, but we ended up going with this one for presenting. And they also liked this flourish off the A, so they presented, I think, this group to them. The final ones we narrowed to were this horizontal format, this square with it stacked, and then keeping the lines with the stacked. Because flowers is kind of a flex word, so they may or may not use flowers in the logo all the time. So let's look more closely at the font choices. We ended up deciding on Cinzel Regular, and this version I had already started modifying. So let's take a look at how much modification this text actually went through. All right, so here is the live font of Cinzel, or Cinzel. And then I started modifying here. So a few things to note were this extended serif, connecting here. I shortened the width of the D and the G. And as we go down to more of the finalized text, you can see a bit of a curvature up here on the serifs. And I ended up flattening that out. I noticed there was actually a taper from the top of the A to the bottom. I thought it was a little bit heavy, so I lightened that in our version. And I noticed there were a few places that were really too thin. So this E, I had modified too thin, and I decided to thicken that a bit. The N, it looks a little narrower. And here you can see with the kerning how different it was. So the live text was here in the green, and I manually tweaked the spacing for each letter. And between the modified and close to the final, these were the slight adjustments that I made. So that's the type of work that really drives me nuts, because you have to stare at it really closely and take steps back to visually make sure that the spacing looks right. So now let's look at some of the color exploration. There were a lot of colors that I explored, and I was partial to this area, this column, kind of a cool gray blue. And I wanted to make sure there was plenty of contrast. So these were also really nice with the white logo. We gave them kind of some blue options that are more like Tiffany and Company, and then tried to explore some more seasonal colors for spring and autumn. So here was kind of a narrowed color palette. So now let's take a look at some of the mock-ups we presented. This was a really cool little tag in the craft color. We did facade mock-ups, or I did. I gave them a lot of mock-ups for Miles and Alyssa to look through, and then they decided what they wanted to present. So I don't know if they use aprons, but I tried to find mock-ups specific to floral, which was a little challenging, but I did find some that worked really well. I really like this gray color of apron, and this is an interesting blue. Also did some tote bags. These ended up being my top favorite mock-ups. And it was really just refreshing to not have to do all the account management and presenting. Sometimes, or oftentimes, design is a very subjective type project. Logos are very personal to the client as well as their audience. And it's also personal to me as the designer. So I am notorious for undervaluing logo projects and then resenting later in the process when it is a lot of work, such as even just a text logo. And when you're providing color palettes, I try to work with a variety of businesses. So I don't give everyone the same rate. If it's an individual with a small business that I'm really interested in versus a large corporate company who is going to have a larger budget. So that's one reason I don't take cold calls. I have a project planner that helps me filter that process, so I'm not spending time listening and trying to navigate all the details when I don't know how serious they are about their investment in the project and in my work and experience. So it's hard to not be attached to that. And then to decide based on a very spontaneous workload whether I want to take the project and what's going to be a dumpster fire the next day. So it's really hard to project out timelines for work. So again, they gave me a lot of time to work on this. It was very reasonable. It really helped a lot that they were presenting to the client and explaining the rationale behind our choices. I'm going to end with the intro video that I made that I wasn't asked to do, but I felt like it really pulled together the brand with the look and feel we were going for. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more videos like this, if it was helpful, and if you have any other questions.